Audio plays a huge role in how a film feels. And sound design is a big part of that. It helps shape the flow and pacing of a film, adds depth to the edit, and connects the viewer to what's happening on screen in ways they might not even realize. It's what makes a scene feel immersive, whether through subtle ambience or dramatic sound effects. As filmmakers, it's easy to fall into the trap of obsessing with our visuals, but sometimes in that process, we forget that audio is just as important. Just like lighting or color grading sets a visual mood, sound design does the same, but on a deeper level. But where do we start? The vocals are usually the most important sound in a video, which can be dialogue or voiceover, carrying the story and information which you don't want to get lost in the mix by being too quiet or overpowered by other elements. Next, we have the background music, which is super important to help set the foundation of the pacing and overall mood of the video. And I personally sometimes like to find the music before I even start shooting, and while this approach might not work for every type of video, this can help me visualize the overall feel and energy of the project and even influence how I decide to shoot. And once those are in place, I'll start focusing on the sound design elements, beginning with ambience or environmental sounds. Ambience is often the first layer of sound design that I add to the timeline, and it's the background noise used to help establish the environment the scene takes place in and make your scene feel alive and immersive. It shouldn't be overpowering, just be there in the background. Depending on your scene, it could be things like wind and subtle city noise, or lapping water and some birds chirping. They're subtle but crucial for grounding your audience in the setting. Then we layer in our sound effects, which I like to group into two main categories. First, there's sounds that comes from the actual environment, like a car door closing, footsteps, or just anything in your scene that you feel like would make a sound. Just like ambience, these don't necessarily draw too much attention to themselves, but they are essential for creating a solid foundation. Foley also falls under this category, which is when you record the sounds yourself, specifically for the project to sync to the on-screen actions. Then we have the creative sound effects, which are added as a creative choice rather than realism. It can be anything from whooshes, impacts, and risers, or just any other sound you can think of to elevate your scene or story. Whooshes are incredibly versatile, and I use them to make cuts, transitions, and movements feel more intentional. And risers are a powerful tool for building anticipation and suspense. And the most common uses of risers is building up to a reveal or smoothing out the cut to a completely different environment or energy level. Which leads me to the next point. The absence of sound is just as important as the presence of it. Just like blending fast-paced handle movements with static shots gives an edit room to breathe, we can apply the same principle to sound design. Instead of filling every second with layers of sound, silence or just a quieter moment builds contrast and make the returning of the sound or music even more impactful. The fun thing about sound design is that it doesn't have to be literal. Just because you see something on screen doesn't mean you have to match it with the exact same sound it will make in real life. Instead, think about how you want the audience to feel and experiment with different sounds to reinforce that emotion. I can make it sound like it rains outside, or like someone's playing music outside my door, when in reality, I don't even have neighbors. Also, if I want a tuk-tuk to sound like a sports car, I can. Before we jump into some of my favorite sound design techniques, I just want to talk about the place I always go to when I'm searching for high quality sound effects, which is Artlist, which was also kind enough to sponsor this video. They are an all-in-one website for all kinds of assets you might need for your filmmaking process, and I've used their music and sound effects since the start, and their sound library is seemingly endless, so whatever sound you're looking for, there's a good chance you will not find just one, but multiple options that could fit your scene. One of my favorite additions to their music library, especially when it comes to sound design, is that many songs include stems. That gives you as an editor the freedom to build a perfect underscore for your story. If there is some distracting instrument in a song, you can just mute that track and make the perfect song to fit your video. Apart from their extensive sound effects and music, they have stock footage, video templates, an AI voiceover generator, lots, and they are constantly adding new things for us creators to use. They have several different subscription plans to fit your needs, all cleared for commercial use. So if you want to dive more into sound design or anything else to make your videos come to life, I have a link in the description that will give you 2 additional months if you decide to sign up. Thank you Artlist for supporting the channel. Let's move on to some of my favorite sound design techniques. One of the most important sound design techniques to make your sound more realistic is to use panning, to position sounds either to the left speaker or to the right speaker. And here's a shot of us cycling in Japan, without any panning, and with panning. Subtle panning can make your soundscape sound more dynamic and realistic. A great way to smooth out cuts and make them feel more seamless when transitioning from scene to scene is to use a J-cut. That means that the audio from the next scene starts playing before the visual cut happens. You do that by extending the audio to the left and gradually fade it in before the clip appears. Being able to hear the sound before the cut really helps to hide the cut and make it feel more motivated. And to also let the audio from the previous scene linger as the visuals change is called an L-cut. These techniques can make edits flow a bit better, even if the cut is to something completely different. Here's the audio timeline from my Japan video, and here you can see all the J-cuts and L-cuts of the blue ambience tracks fading in and out. There are a few ways you can enhance sound effects and tweak them to make them fit the environment better. In most editing programs there's a bunch of built-in audio effects to choose from, but there are 3 that I tend to use in every single project. The first one is Reverb, which is used to create a sense of space or atmosphere, making sounds feel like they actually belong in the environment. For example, a small room should only have a tiny amount of reverb, while a large church should have a much bigger and echoey sound. The size of the space determines how much reverb you need. Or if a certain sound effect sounds a bit dry or abrupt, you can use reverb to make the sound feel larger and more fluid. Reverb can also help push sounds further into the background, and right now this bird sounds really weird and up close. But the more reverb you add, the more it sounds like the birds are coming from a distance. EQ is also something I use in every single project, which you can use to both decrease or increase different audio frequencies. It's a great tool for enhancing voices, but you can also use it to create room for different sounds. For example, if I have a music track and a voiceover track that uses a lot of the same frequencies, I could remove some of those frequencies of the voice from the music to make the voice more prominent. Another use of EQ is to create a high pass or low pass filter. High pass will cut out all the low frequencies of your audio, and low pass will cut out all the high frequencies. You can use this effect to mimic, for example, different speakers, like this phone speaker. Or you can make audio sound muffled or like it's underwater. And here's how a normal wave sound effect sounds like when I add the low pass filter. Now we've come to the last step of the process, which is the mixing, where you want to make sure that nothing's too loud or too quiet, and that the levels are consistent throughout the video. After you've added a bunch of sounds to the timeline, it's easy for the audio levels to start creeping up into the reds, and if the audio is clipping, it will not sound very nice once you export the video. But let's say you're happy with the overall mix, but the levels are still too high, then you can just lower the master volume, which in this case is bus 1, to make sure nothing is peaking. A quick tip if you use Davinci is in the deliver page under audio and audio normalization, we have the option to normalize our entire mix to meet different audio loudness standards. So I usually take this to prevent additional audio compressions from YouTube. Before you press publish, it's a good idea to listen to your film in different speakers to make sure everything sounds like it should. Sound design can be a super powerful tool for creating more immersive videos. And it can be a little bit terrifying when you see someone's timeline and it's like hundreds of audio tracks stacked on top of each other. And also since sound design can be so abstract, you can basically do whatever you want. But by just watching your clips, figuring out what sounds are present in those specific environments and what feelings you want the audience to get when they watch it, then you've already come a long way. And sometimes you don't need more than 1 or 2 layers of sound. And I know sound isn't the most fun topic to talk about, but if you made it this far in the video, that means you're still awake, which is great. And I hope this video has inspired you a little bit to experiment more with sound design, since it's such a crucial part of the viewing experience. And don't forget the 2 additional months of Artlist linked below. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.